Welcome to another episode of Presbyterian and Reformed Churchmen. I'm Pastor George, and I have a really interesting and cool ruling elder to interview, Mike Burns. Mike is the founder, inventor of this product or company called Valvomax. And so what this episode is going to be about is really entrepreneurship and ruling elders. And so doing something a little bit different, but it's really neat because it takes a leap of faith to do what Mike did. Mike is a young ruling elder, passionate about the Lord, and not afraid to take some risks. And so we're looking forward to this discussion. Also, he's a friend of a friend. And so if you listen to my Grace to Stand podcast, Darren Stone, my partner in crime on that one, Mike Burns was a member at one of Darren's former churches, but then he also interacted with Darren where Mike currently is in Texas. So welcome, Mike. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, George, for having me on today's podcast. You know, I've been a listener of not only Presbyterian and Reformed Churchmen, but also Grace to Stand, as you mentioned, and have been really encouraged by what you and Darren Stone are doing over on that podcast. And I've listened to, I think, almost every episode on Grace to Stand, and I think one of my favorite episodes are that one that you did recently with Dr. O. Palmer Robertson, and that was really a great episode. And so, I'm just excited to be on today's show. I was raised in a Reformed Southern Baptist church in Owasso, Oklahoma, which is just north of Tulsa. And when I graduated college, my wife and I were married, and I commissioned into the Air Force. And we moved to Colorado Springs, where we joined our first PCA church. This was back in 2006, so I guess this was about 18 years ago. So I've been in the PCA for about 18 years. And at that time, we were at Village 7 Presbyterian Church, and the church was really in between pastors. We had Dr. Dominic Aquila that was sort of filling in at the pulpit during that time. And then later the church called Mark Bates.
Wait a minute. Dominic Aquila was interim pastoring at the church you were at?
He was. He was filling the pulpit just about each Sunday as the church was sort of between pastors. And so, I heard Dr. Aquila's preaching and really enjoyed hearing him. And that was the first experience we had with the PCA, and so we really appreciated, my wife and I both being raised in the Southern Baptist Church, and how the PCA stresses the absolute sovereignty of God in all things. Amen. And the authority and inspiration of Scripture. And we heard the gospel presented in a way at that church that was different than the way that we had heard it in the past, that really the Bible is all one story, and it's an unfolding of God's plan of redemption. And so we went from there. I guess we were at that church for about 4 years, and then the military moved us to Biloxi, Mississippi, of all places. But there we went to First Presbyterian Church in Biloxi, and I had the chance to meet what turned out to be a really good dear friend of mine, and that's Darren Stone, who you are doing the other podcast with. And we were there at First Pres for, I guess, about 3 years, and then we went back to Oklahoma, and we were part of a church plant called Trinity Presbyterian Church there for a few years, and then because of a job, we got sent down to Houston, Texas, and now we're at Christ Church here in Katy.
Okay. So you know Darren from Biloxi, not from Texas.
Yeah, that's right. So Darren was our senior minister at First Pres in Biloxi.
Okay. All right. And now your senior minister is who?
Fred Greco.
Fred Greco. So, man, that's all. You had Dominic Aquila and Fred Greco. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's right. We go to like General Assembly, and I'll be talking to guys, and I'll say, and they'll ask, "What church are you from?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm from Christ Church in Katy." And they just say, "Oh, okay," and then they say, "Who's your pastor?" And I'll say, well, our pastor is Fred Greco, and they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, now I know exactly who what church you're at.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so you have a long history in the PCA, and I didn't even introduce why I'm having you on, besides you're a cool guy and a listener, but you're an entrepreneur, and we're going to get into that because I want to really, first of all, your product seems so cool, and I wasn't kidding. When I said I wanted to be you, I always kind of wanted to invent something and start a business like that. I have started businesses, but nothing of my own invention. And so we'll get into that. But I forgot, you were in the Air Force, you said, right?
That's right. I was in the Air Force for about 6 years.
Were you a pilot?
No, I was I paid for the airplanes and the pilot salaries. I was in finance.
Okay. All right.
So,
well, very good. Well, thank you for your service. And so what did you do? I guess let's jump into what your product is, and then because you recently left your job now to launch this. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so my business is Valvomax. The whole business is about making oil changes easier, faster, cleaner, safer. Changing oil on your car is a very messy thing. It's very time-consuming. It takes a lot of tools. It's a mess. When you pull the bolt out, the oil just kind of sort of pours out all over the place. It gets on your hands. It spills in the driveway. It gets on the garage floor. And so I was changing my own oil one day, and it just got all over the place. And I thought, my goodness, I can't believe there's not a better way to do this. And so I went to every auto parts store in town, and I asked them if they had a better solution. None of them offered a better way, and so I hired an automotive engineer. We came up with a set of drawings. We prototyped it, 3D printed it, and came up with this product that basically it's a valve that replaces the drain bolt in the oil pan, and it allows for a mess-free, tools-free oil change. And so really anybody can change oil with this product. Makes it fast, makes it quick. We say you can change your oil. I see you got the website up there now. You can change your oil in 10 minutes or less with no mess is kind of our tagline.
That's amazing. I guess the hardest part would be to get to the filter, huh?
Yeah, we're actually working on a tool right now for the oil filter. I have had a lot of customers that have told me, they're like, Mike, you've only solved part of the problem here. The rest of it would be the filter, and so we're working on that. Yeah,
but I think you got the 90% part of the problem. I mean, it's just a messy thing. This is amazing. So if I'm understanding the product right, like you said, it replaces the plug in the, is that what it's called, the plug?
Yeah, the plug, the drain bolt. The
drain bolt, right. And so this will stay in the drain pan permanently, right? This new plug?
That's right. It's designed to permanently replace the bolt in the oil pan.
Okay. And it has a dust cover that comes off. You hook a hose to it. That hose can then hook to a reservoir or a container, like you see if you're watching online, you can see the video. And then how do you start the flow? I mean, how does it, explain that.
Well, the valve doesn't start draining the oil until the drain tool is connected. And so what it is a spring-assisted check ball that's in the valve. And the drain tube contains a bayonet, which is a device that pushes upward on the check ball that's in the valve. And that releases the flow of oil through the drain tube. And then it goes down into my bag system. And the bags can then be taken with the used oil to any of the local auto parts stores. So, Advance, O'Reilly, Napa, AutoZone, they all take the drain bags.
Yeah. When I see this, I'm like, I can't believe this wasn't invented already. I mean, it just makes sense. We're like barbarians there, opening up, like removing a bolt, and then all just the oil comes gushing out. And here you have a nice, clean way to do this. It's amazing. I'm so, congratulations. And you're going to help a lot of people. So where can this be found? Because I think this is awesome. Like, when did you start this? What's the timeline?
Really, I came up with the idea probably in 2016. I incorporated as an LLC in 2018 here in Texas. I started the business in my garage, where I guess a lot of businesses start, right? And my wife and I were sort of putting these together, and then the big, I guess, watershed moment for the business was when a local YouTuber in Houston named Scotty Kilmer, who's very well known in the automotive community, he basically reviewed my product on his YouTube channel, and overnight that video got 1 million views.
What?
I had 750 orders from that video. Before it was like, if we sold 5 or 10 in a week, it was like a great week. And then that video hit live, and when it hit on this channel, I had 750 orders all in one day, and my wife and I are panicking. We're like up all night long the night after it aired, trying to think about how we're going to fulfill these orders. And I guess the rest is kind of just history. It's I'm really grateful for him to do that video, and he's a well-known figure in the automotive DIY space, and a lot of people respect and look up to him and what he has to say. And so, yeah, that video hit, and I think it kind of really proved the concept for us. It showed that there's a need for a product like this out there, and that people are willing to pay for it. And it started off with just selling these through my website and through Amazon, and now we're in 250 stores. And in fact, I just got a purchase order signed from Lowe's, and Lowe's is going to put us in 1,000 stores nationwide.
Praise God. Man.
And so I'm just really excited about that.
I bet. How many SKUs do you have? Or you have to order it by car engine? Like, how does that work?
Well, part of what makes this business a little bit more complicated is that it does depend on the unique make, model, and year of the vehicle. And so not all cars contain the same thread bolt pattern in the oil pan. And so on my website, you would have to select your particular vehicle, and then it tells you what size you need. And so I have really about 12 different SKUs that fit different oil pans. But what I've found is that 3 SKUs account for about 90% of all the cars in the market today. And then the rest of it's sort of a long tail of all those kind of odd makes and models of vehicles that are out there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. So when you got the 750 orders overnight, like, did you have product in the warehouse able to fill those, or then you had to go make them? And you're not making these one by one. I know. I mean, it's
right. No, I didn't. It was a total shock. We had maybe like 20 or 25 sitting on the shelf. And so, it's just this feeling of panic, like, what are we going to do? And so we had to manufacture them over the next month. And so I had to send emails out to all of these people and let them know, we understand if you need to cancel your order, but here's the deal. It's going to take about a month before we get your order out to you.
Yeah, but where are they going to go, right? I mean, you got a patent, and so this is...
That's right.
Yeah. Did you think of going the Shark Tank route?
I've thought about that. When I went to Charlotte a couple of months ago, it was very much like Shark Tank, because I was presenting to buyers at Lowe's, and they bring you into a room and you're talking. It's very, you have 4 minutes to do your whole thing. You've got 60 seconds to set up your product. You've got a minute to present it. And then you've got like another minute or two on the backside to answer questions. And so it was sort of a Shark Tank-like experience, I guess.
Were you just like enjoying the ride, or was there a lot of anxiety and pressure? What was that experience like?
It was interesting. I didn't have a lot of pressure, because even without the Lowe's deal, we're doing pretty well. The business continues to grow. We're getting the word out more and more. And so, having the Lowe's order, I think, is just going to be really nice for us this year. But I really didn't think that this would be something they'd be interested in. But they're wanting to build out the automotive segment of the stores, and so
right. Well, how many of your SKUs are they going to carry?
Right now, they have committed to only carrying in the stores our disposable funnel product, and so I've tried to build out the product line to not only be the oil valve, but also to be the one-stop source for all things oil change related. And so we carry not only the valve, but the disposable funnels, the drain bags, and some other tools. And so right now they've committed to carrying the disposable funnels in the stores.
Right, so they're not carrying the plug, the whole system at this point.
At this point, right.
Right. Okay, that makes sense, because that would take a lot of display space to have every... Yeah. Are you in auto parts stores like AutoZone or...
Not yet. I'm talking to some of them right now, and I'd love to be able to get into something like that. But we're continuing the talks with stores like that.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to me about like the spiritual journey of the whole thing too, because I think it's tough. It's scary, man, to go out on your own to invest. I mean, you actually hired somebody. I mean, that's an expense, and to file a patent, and any big company could knock you off before you get your work done, and just this, inertia is hard to break. You got a good thing in life, but I'm going to go out and take this risk. So how did you guys think through that, pray through that? Was your wife nervous about it? How did it work out?
Well, it was a big decision to quit my job back last September, and it was something that we prayed a lot about. We sought the counsel of others in our church, and before we made the decision to do that, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've just always loved small business and the creativity and solving a problem, bringing products to market, making people's lives easier, and so. We ultimately decided, and my wife got to the point where she's like, I just think you need to quit your job. For the longest time, she
was
awesome. Very hesitant about it. She's saying, I don't think we should do that. I think you should continue working at your job. And so it was really tough. It was really taxing on us being, not only having a job but working in downtown Houston, and so driving in, an hour each way to work. Putting in the hours there, and then doing this side business in the evenings and in the early morning hours. And so what I found since I transitioned from being a full-time employee to now being a full-time entrepreneur is that that has freed up time for me to serve the church in ways that I would have never been able to do before. And so whereas before, you had to request time off, I had to do so many hours on the clock before I could leave for the day. Now I have a lot more freedom to be able to meet with families in my shepherding group at our church, to have lunch with guys in Katy that I would have never been able to do before, to spend more time doing different activities at the church, and it's just really been a wonderful time since September, even though it didn't come without some, uncertainty and just because I've always had a job, and so it still feels a little bit odd. Like I don't have anyone telling me what to do every day.
So, wow. I mean, I get that because you were doing two things. You had a full-time job, and then you're running this other business, but you would think a business like, and how you're expanding and the product line's growing like that would be, it certainly is a full-time job, but it's giving you flexibility. But do you see that your flexibility coming to an end in the near future as you grow? I mean, you're going to grow. This thing is, everybody's got cars, and lots of people are doing their own oil changes, and I can't imagine not wanting this, so.
Yeah, and that's a good question. And so one of the things that I've really tried to do is to focus on the things that I can outsource and the things that I can delegate, the things that I can automate, and so that I don't have to keep myself doing busy work all day, that I can sort of set the overall direction. We started off the business in my garage. It was just my wife and I. And then we started bringing in some temporary help, mainly from the church, from our youth group, guys in the neighborhood that would come by my garage and help me put these together. And then now we have 5 employees, and they come in here and they assemble these products. They put barcodes on them, they package them, they test them, they ship them out. And so as we continue to scale, I think that's going to be an important thing, is achieving that balance and figuring out how to automate certain things and delegate where I can, because you're right. It is, Lord willing, the business would continue to grow, and that the Lord would continue to grow the business and get the name out there more, and that it would provide that income for us going into the future.
Yeah. So hold it up. Show it to us.
So this is the quick twist oil drain valve. This is our main product. This is the piece here that screws into the oil pan of the car. And then this is the drain tube that connects to the valve. And then that can be connected to our optional drain bag system. And this is our one of our drain bags. This is a 20-liter bag that holds the used oil.
So when we fry our turkey for Thanksgiving, the peanut oil comes in those containers, and I'm just wondering if if we're actually frying it in old oil change oil, and we don't realize it because it looks the same. No,
but maybe.
No.
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not too. I love what you said. I mean, this obviously is a Ruling Elder podcast, but I just wanted to do something different because I think what you have is unique, and I'm excited for you because the journey is so fresh, And I love how you said how you saw how it freed you up to serve the Lord. I think, a lot of people have that on their heart, and I think a lot of people try to bargain with God. Lord, if you make this a success, I'm going to serve you more. And but I mean, you are, and that's awesome. So how long have you been a Ruling Elder?
So I was ordained and installed as a ruling elder in July of 2020. So kind of in the middle of COVID. Before that, I was a deacon. I was installed as a deacon back in 2014. And so, so I guess a ruling elder for about coming up on 3 years, maybe 2.5 years.
Yes. Yeah. And so Fred Greco's to blame, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if you've seen. I have a Fred Greco GRN talk in this podcast. Like if you go through iTunes or something, it's there. I'm on the GRN General Counsel, and John Payne gave me permission to include those talks because they've had a couple of Ruling Elder specific talks. And so I don't know. I think Brad shared one of the podcasts on Presbycast, and Fred's like, I didn't know I was a part of this podcast. And I'm like, oh man, Fred the lawyer, I hope I didn't, I know I got permission from the owner of the video, but I didn't get permission from the speaker. Yeah. So, anyway.
That was a good talk that Fred gave. I think that was at the GRN that was back in Birmingham. At
first one.
Yeah, at Harry Reeder's church. But yeah, I've had the privilege of going to, I think, 2 or 3 of the GRN conferences, and just what a wonderful time that is to fellowship with other like-minded guys and to hear great speakers. And it's just a very encouraging couple of 2-3 days.
Yes, definitely. This year it's just an hour from me in Matthews, North Carolina, which is Charlotte. So I don't know, you're probably not making that trip, but
oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot I was in Charlotte this year. Yes.
So I actually had Darren and I were discussing earlier today. But if you go to GA or something, we gotta grab. Are you planning on going to General Assembly? You think?
I think so. It's in Memphis this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I plan to go.
Oh man, we'll definitely grab a meal and hang out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your family, kids' ages, your wife's name, if you want. I mean, but just tell us about your family life and.
Yeah. So my wife is Stephanie. We have 3 children, ages 9, 11, and 13. We go to a small classical school here in Katy called Aristoi Classical Academy, and my wife teaches math there.
Oh.
She teaches all the upper level high school math, all of the classes that I intentionally tried to avoid, being in this higher level calculus and those kind of things. But yeah, we are very active in school, in both not only church but also in school. And Samuel, our oldest, plays basketball, and so we're doing that a lot of the times in the evenings. And then our middle child is in violin, and then our youngest one is in soccer. And so it's just a mile a minute. There's always something going on.
Right. And so my kids. So Susan and I are married about the same as you guys. We have 3 kids. Also, she also was a certified math teacher in Florida. Yeah, and I was too, by the way. I taught those high school classes. After I was an engineer, I went into being a math teacher. So that's great. And
I've
good.
I was going to say I've really been interested in, and I'd like to hear more about your background sometime, because you have such an interesting background. As an engineer, a product designer, a developer, being I think at admissions, like over admissions at a small school, and then all while getting your seminary degree and ruling elder, and now a senior pastor, and so it's just a really cool experience background.
Yes. Jump from thing to thing, but God's been in it. Yeah, so when I was an engineer with Procter & Gamble, I actually didn't get to design any products, although I did design modifications to machinery, but it was mostly launching, in the launch of new products, the installation of the machinery at the site, and then like a process engineer getting it to run better, but then managing the teams, overseeing the teams and the projects. So that was more the engineering I did. I also worked for a plastic injection molding plant and a metal stamping plant for a while, and it was the same thing. It was more like a process engineer. And I always wanted to design my own products, and then, like a lot of people, had lots of ideas but never really kind of made them happen. But yeah, I ended up leaving the corporate world, not because there was anything wrong with the corporate world, obviously. I mean, but it was like a drive to get ahead, and I was living, like I had money. They were sending me all over the world. I mean, I'd gone to Germany a number of times, and a lot of business travel, and I got in with a travel team that we enjoyed traveling. I mean, we partied, we got into some things I'm not proud of, and just felt empty. I had everything I ever wanted in life, and felt like I didn't have anything. It was always on trying to get the next thing, And then the Lord just, he called me out of it. And Procter & Gamble was offering voluntary separation packages at the time. They were trying to downsize, and so you could apply to be downsized, and they'll pay you to leave. And I said, this might be a great way to leave. And so I applied. It was like May of 2001, I guess. May of 2001, I think. Okay. And they asked me to stay through the end of the year because they wanted me to work some projects. And I was like, yeah, I'm not in a rush. And so I stayed. And then I left. And much to my parents' dismay, what do you mean you left your engineering job that we sacrificed to send you to engineering school? And what are you going to go do? I'm going to go be a math teacher. You're what? So I moved back. I was in Pennsylvania, moved back to Florida. And I sensed God was calling me, but I didn't know really who God was at that point. I mean, I would have claimed to be a Christian. And I don't know how God kind of works. We're called from the foundation of the world. And I often traced my conversion, whatever, to and I don't say whatever as a throwaway. I mean, obviously very important, but I came forward at a concert in middle school, a Christian concert, but that's middle school, and then I was living like the world for so many years, and so when the Lord actually opened my eyes, I don't know, but He was working in my life throughout it, and so I was a teacher for a while. And then when I met my wife, Susan, that's when I really wanted to explore my faith, because I said, well, Lord, I sense you're doing these things, but I don't know what it all means. And if I'm this woman you've put in my life, it seems like can change everything. And so I asked her to read More Than a Carpenter with me, because somebody had given me that book. It's a Josh McDowell book, and she was willing to. And the Lord just drew us to Himself, And in that, really what I think when I look at that journey, it was kind of like I kind of knew that Jesus paid the price for my sins. And so I could only get forgiveness in him, but that's kind of where it ended, and in exploring with Susan what the gospel was and sitting under good preaching, I realized, man, it's so much better than that. I mean, it is that. And praise God, we have forgiveness of sins, but we're then children of God,
Absolutely.
God is our Father. I mean, that's like mind blowing, And so, but yeah, my journey, sorry to go into all that. You were asking about it. Went back into the business world for a while. I was running businesses for this entrepreneur and starting up multiple businesses for him and running them, hiring people for him. So, but again, none of my own products. That's why I'm kind of, I'm proud of you, man. And so it's cool. And then I was a deacon like you were, and then a ruling elder, and just so hungry to study. We had Knox Theological Seminary down in South Florida, so was in seminary and took classes for like 10 years. And really kind of thinking like the Lord was using me. I was able to teach in my church. I was able to be a ruling elder. I was serving as clerk of session, helping administratively because of administrative giftings that I had, but also shepherding, of course, and saying, okay, I think this is what you're doing, Lord, because you need men in the world, people in the world. Every Christian can't work in the church, it's like, and so this is great, it's but he actually ended up calling me into full-time ministry, and that's something he did. So, and my whole life, I've always kind of kicked down doors that I wanted to go through. And I always said the call to be a pastor, I'm just not going to do, I'm not going to kick down that door. God's going to have to like drag me into it. And he make it so obvious, and he just did. And so that's kind of that journey. Yeah, but I know what it is to be a ruling elder. I was a ruling elder at this point still longer than I've been a teaching elder. So,
yeah, that's an amazing testimony of God's grace that He brought you out of that former life and into a position now where you're able to, preach His word on a regular basis from your pulpit ministry and encourage those around you. Oftentimes, it's interesting, we tend to think of corporate secular jobs as being beneath those of full-time ministers. But those who are out in the corporate world can have a huge influence in a lot of ways that pastors can't, by bringing the gospel to bear in their ongoing daily interactions with coworkers. And they're exposed to people who the senior pastor is never exposed to. And so think of the opportunity there for those who are in the workplace to be an example for the Lord.
Yeah, that's so true, and that's very convicting to me because particularly during the time, because I have worked at two different schools, one Catholic, one Christian. The Christian school I was working at was maybe the largest in the country, 1,800 students at the time. If not the largest, the top, got to be top 5. It was a Calvary Chapel in South Florida. But when I was starting business with that entrepreneur, I was witnessing to everybody. and that's not in my nature. I don't say that brag. I'm just saying, like, I was just passionate for, Lord, give me the opportunity, help me to bring conversations around to you, and give me the boldness to go for it, because so often we don't want to take that step. And so I would witness to coworkers, I'd witness to vendors, I'd witness to customers, I'd witness at the sandwich shop. And again, that's not a natural thing for me. Some people they just exude evangelism. That honestly, it's not me. But now, I mean, my ministry is to the body here at Meadowview. My call is to disciple and proclaim the word. Of course, I'm out there, in the world when I can be. And of course, I'm participating in outreaches as we do them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like people in the world are in the world, and they're able to interact with, like, a lot of times people think it's like my job to get people in the church. And I'm like, it's not my job to get people in the church. If it's anybody's job that's not God's job, it's your job. You guys are in the world.
Right.
Right. but I'm happy sharing the burden. It's like, if you think it's mine, it's not. It's, but we're called to be faithful in those things. So yeah, I appreciate that focus. Also, I think what's helped me in being a ruling elder first is it's made me sensitive to working with the guys on the session who have a full-time job during the day and have to come in for a meeting. That can be very stressful, and they don't get to see their family that night, right? I mean, they go from work to a meeting, and then they go home, and so I just want to accommodate that. I want to schedule things around their schedules, and so how have you managed those kinds of things? Like, you have a young family, and at a great age. I mean, because these are great ages, are the ages that your kids are, and but yet you have you're running a business that's growing, and you're shepherding the flock of a church, or helping. You're one of the shepherds there. How do you find managing all that?
Well, it's not always easy. And you mentioned ruling elders and the difficulty it is oftentimes to serve the church when they are engaged in a 9-to-5, so to speak. And when I was working a full-time job and doing this business on the side, it was very difficult because if you go to Presbytery, that's an evening meeting. Session meetings are evening meetings. And oftentimes, at different churches throughout the country, the Presbytery meetings are on Saturdays. And so you give up that day off. General Assembly is vacation, for your, in terms of taking your paid time off or your vacation time from that business. And so
that's right.
It's a sacrifice, but I think it's a sacrifice that's worth pursuing in being active churchmen in the PCA and what we're doing as a denomination. And so it's important, I think, for ruling elders, going back to your conversation, I think with more in the PCA, that was an interesting interview as well, and talking about the importance of engagement of ruling elders and making that a priority to show up and to be on the committees at Presbytery and General Assembly and in doing that. So I think that's really important. In terms of the priorities now and how things are being balanced, as I mentioned, I've just found that, and this has been a blessing from the Lord in a lot of ways, because it has freed up time for me to engage in the church in ways that I would have never been able to do before. And that is being more actively involved in the daily lives of our church members, getting to meet them during the day, just last week, we have a Reformed Theological Seminary here in Houston that meets at Christ Evangelical Presbyterian Church, which is in Houston, but because their air handler wasn't working there, we had a RTS class here that was hosted by our church here in Katy. That met, and so I was able to attend that RTS class from Dr. Guy Waters. He was teaching on the book of Acts and Romans, and it met during the day. And so, as I was sitting there in that class a couple of weeks ago, hearing him teach, it just sort of dawned on me that, man, what a blessing from the Lord this is. And I would have never been able to do this had I still been employed by a full-time job. And so it's just, the Lord has been gracious to our family and in seeing fit that this business would provide for our needs, and then to free up time that I could serve the church in that way.
Oh, that's awesome. So what advice would you have to people listening who have an idea, either for a business or a product that would be a business, about balancing the tensions of having to provide for their family, having this job security of an employer that they might currently have, and having to take some steps of faith, both in financial investment, but also with at some point saying, the Lord is leading us into this. We're gonna step in faith and do it, and honestly, again, while I haven't had that exact journey. That's been a lot of my story, where I've quit jobs or careers because I believed I was being led into another thing. So I've left things before I had something, knowing that the Lord would lead me into that, and people don't really get that because it is hard. So what advice do you have for people?
Well, I would just encourage people to pray about it, to not go about it without seeking the counsel of others, trusted advisors in the church. Talk with one of your elders. Talk with a trusted friend, in the church, and get their thoughts on it. And just try to find that area in your life where you think that there is friction involved. For me, it was changing oil. It's just something that I grew up doing. I always watched my dad change oil in our cars. And so, as I was doing this activity on my own and just noticing the friction that was there, the difficulty it was in changing oil, and then trying to see what else is being done to solve that problem. And so in your day-to-day life, people who are wanting to start a products business, just try to find out what are the problems, what are the difficulties you're experiencing, and then how are people solving that problem now? And if they aren't solving it now, then that could be an area of opportunity for you. And there are so many resources available now, podcasts, freelancers, people who are doing engineering work, graphic design, engineering support, with 3D printers, and you can prototype and iterate, very quickly. And so, but yeah, as someone who's thinking about starting something like this, I would just say, pray about it, and seek the counsel of other wise men and women in the church that would point you in the right direction.
Oh, that sounds like good advice. So I definitely want to hang out with you. Maybe we can see each. You wouldn't be coming over to GRN in May, right?
I don't know that I'm going to come out to Charlotte for that in May, but I'll definitely be at General Assembly. Cool.
That'll be great to see you. Tell Fred the troublemaker says hello. Mike, it's so good to talk to you. I'm impressed with your business. What's the website? What's the web address for people that want? Is Valvomax.com? Is that what it is?
Valvomax.com. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So if you're listening to this and you change your own oil, I don't know why you wouldn't get this. Go to Valvomax.com. Not that this is a commercial, but I'm so excited to watch this journey for you. And I'm going to look to see if you're in one of our Lowe's locally when that purchase order goes through. But also, I'm just excited for what you're doing for the Lord and your heart for the Lord and His church and the PCA. And I hope I know this will be an encouragement to others that are listening that may be thinking of going off on their own. So, yeah. Thanks again, Mike.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for having me on the episode, and really appreciate what you're doing. And like I said, not only with this podcast, but also Grace to Stand and the encouragement that you give out there. And thanks for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. And so this is another episode of Presbyterian Reformed Churchmen. Until next time, thanks again. Bye-bye.